Hi everyone, it's Mrs Baly here and welcome to your art lesson. Today we're going to be learning about printmaking. Now to do our printmaking today we're going to need some printer paper. I've just cut some up into some different sizes. You can have a little bit. This is pretty addictive so you can keep printing as much as you really like. You need some foam from a meat tray which needs to be really well washed, and what you want you to do is get mum or dad or you with supervision to cut out the base of it so you've got it nice and flat. So you want a really flat piece. It doesn't matter what size it is, just as long as you've got the flattest piece that you possibly can. And again, if you've got a few trays, grab a few different pieces because you can do lots of different things with them. You'll need some textas, a pen or a pencil. If you would like to print with paint, you can have some paint. If you have got access at home, or if you've got one of these at home, a little roller, that would be really handy. Even if you've got a little paint roller with foam that you might have for your little brothers or sisters might have in their paint trays, that would be really handy. If you don't, you can use a paintbrush and a spray bottle filled with water. So just a little one, that's going to help us with the textures. So that's all you really need to have lots of fun printmaking. So we've got the 3 steps basically, so I'll leave this up so you can refer to it at any stage during the process. We're going to draw patterns into the foam with a pen. We're going to cover with colour, either text or a paint, up to you how you're going to do that. And we're going to press down firmly onto paper to print. So I've got some samples of what the plates might look like when we're finished, or when we finish drawing them. So these are some that I've already printed, and you can see if you're really careful with them you can actually keep them for a while. This one I've accidentally broken, but that's okay because I can still get a cool print off that. If you have got a slightly thicker meat tray, this one was quite thin, you may be able to very carefully do a design on both sides, which is really awesome. Now, the number one rule for printing, however, is particularly this style of printing, anything you print will be reversed. So that means I would advise you against writing your name on it, or writing letters, or writing numbers, or writing a sentence, because anything you print will be reversed. If you really think about it and practice it beforehand, you might be able to write something out backwards, but it's a bit tricky. So I would probably stay away from doing that until you're a little bit more familiar with the process to begin with. So we're going to start with designing our project. So I'm going to start with my little bit of foam down here just to show you what we can do. I'm actually going to draw out with a coloured pen first, and if you've got access to a coloured pen, it's really handy because it means you can see where you're going to draw in. So with my coloured pen, before I begin, I'm going to draw out really lightly. So I'm not going to score into this sheet. So this is our practice go, I suppose. If you make any dents or lumps and bumps at the moment, it's going to print in our final copy. So you do need to be really careful when you're drawing. So I'm going to just draw some shapes because I love shapes. So I'm going to draw. So you can see I'm really drawing lightly. I'm trying not to score into it. So I'm going to draw some stars. So I love star shapes. So if I don't like something, I can get rid of it at this stage. Oops. So when I'm drawing, I like to have odd numbers of things, and if you look at lots of artists' work, you will often find that they have odd numbers in their work. For some reason, our brains like odd numbers. So 3 or 5 of something looks really good to us. So I'm just going to do those 5 stars. Now, I'm actually going to fill these with pattern, but I'm not going to do that at the moment because I'm just going to work out if I'm happy with that design, and I am. So I'm going to go in with a pen now, and this is where I'm going to press down. And I'm going to use a different colour so you can actually see me pressing down into it. So again, if you've got long fingernails, try not to sort of stick your fingernails into it, because you will get a dent in it and it will print. I'm actually going to press down a little bit more firmly. Again, you don't want this to go through to the other side. So while I'm pressing firmly, it's still, I don't have to use too much pressure. But you should be able to see there's a little bit of an indent, and you can see my pen going into the foam. So I'm not particularly following all those lines that I had before. That's okay. If you didn't really like something or something didn't look right, you can sort of change it on the go. The first drawing is just your guide. Make sure you're happy with everything was. So I just want to make this leg a bit thicker and go out a little bit close to the edge. Okay, so I've got my 5 stars on that. So now I've got that. That would look pretty cool if I printed it, but it's a bit boring. So I'm going to go back in and put some line work in. So you can see on both of these pictures, they've got doodling on them. If you look up on the internet, something called zentangle, sorry. So zentangle, you will find lots and lots of patterns that you can colour, but it can be just as simple as putting extra lines in. So I'm going to do a liney star here. I'm just going to put lines the whole way across it. Okay. On this star down the bottom, I'm going to put curved lines. So this is one of my favourite patterns to draw. I know a lot of people at school have their own favourite patterns that they like to draw. So whatever you know, on your pad when you're sitting, listening, hopefully, to the teacher, you might have a favourite pattern you like to draw. So that's what I'm going to draw in here. Okay, so I'm just moving around for each of the little loops. I'm putting 3 loops next to it, as much as I can. Oops. Going to put one down here. Okay, so I've got that little pattern now. Let's see, what am I going to do for this one? This one I'm going to put dots. And I'm going to connect my dots up with lines. Because I can. So your patterns don't need to be complicated patterns. They can be really, really simple. But it's just simple shapes joining up together. And again, if you go and look at those zentangle sites, they've got lots of patterns that you can follow. Okay, this one, what am I going to do for the next one? Oh, let's have some zigzags. So it's coming up to Easter. This would be a really cool thing that you could do. You could draw Easter eggs on here and do Easter patterns and make a really cool Easter card for someone. These prints make really great cards, so you could be busy making birthday cards and Christmas cards for all your family members while you're at home. So on this one I'm going to do swirly shapes just in different directions. Fill up the gaps. It's a bit hard when you're getting close to the edge. There you go. Okay, so I've got swirly patterns. So what I'm going to do for this one is I am going to print this to see what it looks like. Okay, so to print my piece, I'm just going to move the rest of this paper out of the way. I'm going to use a texta, and I'm just going to scribble over it. Now this is a brush texta. If you have got brush textures at home, or a brush tip like this, they are really handy just because you're less likely to actually dent your foam, because you can see I'm using it on its side. If you have got normal textures, just go slowly with it and try not to hold your pen like that and scrub into it. So you're just doing it by the side, just so you're getting the colour on the page, not the tip going into it. So once you've done that, I'm going to spritz it with a little bit of water. And you'll see all that texture beads up. Because textures are water soluble, which means they react to water. Okay, so what I'm going to do is get my paper and I'm going to rub all over my surface. And you can see there, I'm getting a print come up. All that water is going to help that ink transfer over. So this is called a test print, because basically I'm just printing it out to see what it looks like. And there you go, I've got my print. So you can see quite clearly where I've made the dents in my foam to make it more interesting. Now I quite like that the way it is. I like the watercolor effect you get from the texture in the background. But if I decided, for example, I wanted to do more pattern on this, I could go in and put in more pattern. Now the pen I'm using has got quite a broad tip on it, so I could then find another pen. I don't know if I've got one here. I don't think I do. Pencil might work. Okay, something's got a really fine point on it, and I can make some really fine lines in the background for some difference on my page. So I'm going to do a fine line on the outside of some of my stars, just so if we can see, we get a different effect. So one of the things in art is varying your line width. So making some things thicker and some things thinner makes your artwork a little bit more interesting, no matter what you're doing. So if I was drawing a face, for example, and I used a pen that had a really thin nib and I used a pen that had a really thick nib, I'm going to get some really cool effects that I probably couldn't have got if I just used the one pen. Okay to have oopses as well. I have them all the time. That's what makes them unique and handmade. Only you can make that oops, no one else can do it. So that means it's your individual artwork. Ding, ding, ding. Do that one very well. There we go. Okay, so I've drawn another line around the outside of those. So I'm going to do another test print. I'm going to use a different colour this time. And I might actually do my stars one colour and the background another colour. So your prints can be multicoloured, particularly if you're using texta. That's one of the great reasons for using texta, because you can put as many colours on as you want. And it doesn't matter if it dries on here. It's very unlikely to, but that's why we put the water on at the end, because that's going to help transfer the ink over. So I'm putting one colour on here. Now these are like colours. These are, if you remember from the video before when we were talking about colour theory. These are neighbours on the colour wheel, so these are called analogous colours. So pinks and purples sit close to each other on the colour wheel, so they're next door neighbours. Okay, so I'm going back in again. Oh, that's a juicy purple. Okay, and again, when you're colouring in, depending on what textures you've got at home, just make sure that you have you're colouring in using the texture on its side, because you don't want to make marks into your foam where you don't want them, where you don't want marks, sorry. Now I'm being slightly naughty here. I'm colouring in different directions. For the purposes of this, it doesn't matter, because we're going to wet the ink and it's going to act more like a watercolour. So if I was doing this on paper and colouring in like this, I would have lots of lines going in lots of different directions, and it would look a little bit odd. Usually when we're colouring in, we always go in the same direction, just to make it look a little bit more even and to help our colours blend together better. But for this case, it doesn't matter. Just want to get the paint down. Okay. So again, once I finish putting my texture down, I'm going to hold my page up. I'm going to hit it with my water. Okay, and then I'm going to print. So again, it's really, really important that you don't move your paper, but I am pressing down. It's called burnishing when you're printmaking. So I get a good print over the back. Okay, and now you can see I've got a two-tone print, which looks a little bit more interesting than my first print. So by mixing the colours on your page, you can get some really cool effects. So I could do the same with this one, and this one, colour all the different trees in different colours of green, for example, and colour in the background. If I was doing Easter eggs, I could have them all different colours. I am going to show you quickly before I go how to print with paint, and two different methods. So first of all, if you've got a mat that you're working on, it could be perhaps a piece of plastic. That would be great. If you have got another meat tray, it could just be the actual meat tray there. You can actually put some paint onto here and use this as your palette, which is probably the best way to go. So I'm going to put out a little bit of green paint. You do not need very much. So don't stand here and squeeze it all out. Less is more. You can always put more paint out. You can't put it back into the tube, so just be aware. So I'm going to use a roller to do this. If you've got a foam roller, that will be great too. So I'm just going to roll the paint out. Now the reason I'm doing this is because I actually want to put the paint onto the roller and I want it to be even. I don't know if you can hear that sound. It's sort of like a squeaky sound. That means it's getting nice and even. And again, I'm just going to roll it out. Now when you're rolling onto your printmaking mat, you just want to roll in one direction. If you go backwards and forwards, you're actually just going to take the paint off. So you just want to go in one direction. Okay, so again, I'm going to go in with my paper and I'm going to print. And just like before with everything else we do when we print, we put down our paper and we rub over the back. So we burnish it to get the best possible print we can. Okay, I'm going to slowly peel it off and you'll see I've got the print here. So you'll notice a difference between the prints. The textures give you a beautiful watercolor effect. It's much softer. With the paint, it's a little bit more opaque and it's a lot crisper. Okay, so there's two different techniques and two different reasons for doing them. So, there's different reasons for using water soluble, so the textures, and for using paint. A lot of traditional most traditional printmaking uses a really sticky ink. Okay, so I've got my patterned piece here. And I'm just, again, going to burnish over the back. Just use your fingers to do it. And you can notice I'm keeping my fingers quite flat. I'm not poking into it. Okay, and you can end up with a really brilliant effect. So you could quite easily trim that down and make that into a Christmas card or a birthday card or something else. So the last little thing I'm going to show you while I'm here is very quickly on the back of this piece, I'm just going to write something just to show you what happens if you do write. So I'm going to write Mrs Baly. Okay, and now I'm going to write it backwards. You have to think about this, about the direction of your letters. I have to think about the S, which way that's going to go. I want to go that way, so I have to go that way. And again with the A, L's are pretty easy, and the Y. Okay, so I'm just going to use the last little bit of my paint here. Over that, get another piece of paper. Okay, so if we look at this, the top one I wrote so you could read it, the bottom one I wrote reversed. If I turn this page open, you'll see the top one is now reversed, and the bottom one, where I wrote it backwards, is the right way around. So you can print with letters and numbers, but you just need to remember they must be backwards. Really, really important. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have fun with this technique. It is so much fun to do, and with stuff that you can find around your house. And you can keep these little plates for as long as you want and create lots and lots of them. I'd love to see your creations, so please let me know when you've been doing things and tag me in them. Until next time, bye for now.